I always thought that maybe, just maybe, if I planned everything perfectly, my family would finally see me. Not as the backup, not as the fixer, just me. That's why I spent months scraping together enough savings to book a full-blown vacation at Lakeshore Resort, the kind of place where everything smells like cedar and cinnamon, and the water looks like it's been filtered through a dream. 2 rooms, 5 nights, a golden opportunity for a fresh start. I stood in the hotel lobby, heart thudding, while my mother, sorry, Mr. Harris, fussed over Lucas's luggage as if it were a ticking bomb. Every item was adjusted, realigned, worshipped. Meanwhile, my suitcase, the cheap one with the scuffed wheels, lay forgotten by the door where the cab driver had dumped it. Some things, it seems, don't get better with time. They just dig in deeper. Sam, be a sweetheart and check us in, will you? Mr. Harris said, without even glancing at me, too busy smoothing down Lucas's designer jacket like he was preparing him for a royal coronation. I swallowed the bitter taste rising in my throat and approached the front desk. Reservation for Samantha Harris, the first said. The receptionist, Jacob, his name tag chirped, smiled brightly and clicked away at his keyboard. Of course, 2 rooms, a lakeside suite and a garden view room. Perfect. Exactly what I'd booked. When I returned with the key cards, my family circled like vultures. Mr. Harris snatched the keys from my hand and immediately announced, Lucas will take the suite, of course, because the sun rose and set around Lucas, because I was just the orbiting debris. But I tried. My voice embarrassingly small. I thought maybe you and Mum would take the suite this time? A silence so heavy you could have wrapped it around your shoulders like a wet blanket. Don't be silly, Samantha, Mrs. Harris chimed in, barely lifting her gaze from her phone. Your brother needs the space for his equipment. Lucas's equipment consisted of a laptop, a gaming headset, and a whole lot of entitlement. And the other room? I asked. Mr. Harris waved dismissively. 1 queen bed, it's fine. You can crash on the pull-out couch in our room. I stared at them, at the floor, at anything but their faces. I had planned every inch of this trip down to the brand of coffee in the minibar. I thought stupidly that this time would be different. Instead, it was the same old story, different view. Something inside me, some small, stubborn core, started to crack open. The part that had spent 26 years folding itself smaller and smaller just to fit. No, not this time. I don't even remember walking back to the front desk. I just know that 1 minute I was standing there, heart hammering like a trapped bird, and the next minute I was looking at Jacob again, who gave me a careful, professional smile. I need to change my reservation, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. And just like that, the first real crack appeared in the foundation of what my family thought they could get away with. 10 minutes later, I returned to them holding 1 single keycard. Mr. Harris glanced up from his phone, frowning. Where are the others? He demanded. There aren't any others, I said. I've cancelled your rooms. The words felt good in my mouth. Heavy. Final. Mrs. Harris blinked as if she hadn't heard me right. You what? Lucas pulled off his sunglasses, an exaggerated motion meant to show how very annoyed he was. You can't be serious, Sam. Oh, I'm serious, I said. Deadly serious. For a beat, nobody moved. I could practically hear the gears turning as they tried, and failed, to shove me back into the role they'd carved out for me. Mr. Harris's face darkened to a shade I hadn't seen since I'd come home an hour late from prom. You fix this, he growled. Right now. No, I said simply. That word again. Small, sharp, unmovable. You're ruining everything, Mrs. Harris hissed, stepping closer, her manicured nails digging into my forearm. After all we've sacrificed for you, I laughed. A brittle sound. All you've sacrificed? You mean like the time you missed my entire high school graduation because Lucas sprained his wrist playing VR games? Lucas rolled his eyes. God, you're so dramatic. The memory hit me harder than I expected. The folding chairs lined up on the football field, my diploma clutched in sweaty hands, the empty seats where they should have been. No, I said again, pulling my arm free. Not anymore. You can't just leave us stranded, Miss S. Harris cried. Where are we supposed to stay? I shrugged. There's a motel a few miles out of town. I'm sure they have a pull-out couch you'll love. Lucas made a disgusted noise. You think I'm sleeping in some roach motel? Guess you'll have to get creative. Genius, I said, feeling lighter than I had in years. Mr. Harris stormed toward the reception desk, demanding to speak to a manager. But Jacob, to his everlasting credit, stayed calm. I'm sorry, sir, he said smoothly. The reservation was under Samantha Harris. She had full rights to modify it. I stood there, letting the scene wash over me. No apologies, no backpedaling, just consequences finally. As I turned toward the elevators, I caught a glimpse of Lucas, jaw slack, Miss S. Harris clutching her pearls like the world had ended, and Mr. Harris spitting fury at a poor hotel employee. And for the first time ever, I didn't care, not even a little. The elevator doors closed with a satisfying ding, and I leaned back against the wall, feeling my heart slow its frantic race. I'd done it. I had actually done it. No tears, no pleading, no second-guessing. Just a clean, irreversible choice. The penthouse suite, the presidential suite, to be exact, was ridiculous in the best possible way. It had vaulted ceilings, massive glass windows overlooking the lake, a deep soaking tub framed by candles, and a king-sized bed that could have swallowed me whole. A chilled bottle of champagne sat waiting in a silver bucket next to a bowl of strawberries. It all felt a little surreal, like stepping into a version of my life where I wasn't second best. I popped the champagne, the cork soaring toward the ceiling, and laughed, a real bubbling laugh that startled me with its sheer joy. To me, I thought, raising the glass toward my reflection in the window, to finally choosing myself, the first night was a slow unravelling. Room service wheeled in a feast, eggs Benedict, a waffle tower, fresh squeezed orange juice, crispy bacon. I ate on the balcony wrapped in one of the hotel's oversized robes, watching the sun melt into the horizon. My phone vibrated non-stop, dancing across the nightstand like an angry bee. Texts, calls, voicemails. Mostly from Miss S. Harris, each one more desperate than the last. Where are you? You are being incredibly selfish. Think about your family, Samantha. We're stuck at some disgusting motel with bed bugs. Lucas chimed in once too, way to ruin everything like always. I didn't answer any of them. I didn't even open most of the messages. I silenced my phone, flipped it face down, and let the world wait for once. The next morning, the sunlight woke me naturally. No Lucas blaring his video games through paper-thin walls. No Miss S. Harris banging on doors demanding everyone get ready. No Mr. Harris barking orders like a corporate executive. Just quiet. Clean, sweet, undemanding quiet. I ordered room service, again French toast, with berries this time, and took my coffee down to the lake shore. A narrow trail wound its way through the woods to a private beach where the water lapped lazily against the shore. I kicked off my sandals and walked barefoot through the wet sand, the cold bite of the water making me laugh under my breath. Freedom, it turned out, tasted like fresh coffee and smelled like pine and sunshine. The activities I'd booked, the ones meant to be family bonding experiences, were still happening, of course. I had paid for everything, and damn it, I was going to enjoy them. The sunset cruise was first. When I arrived at the marina that evening, my stomach twisted with an old, familiar worry. Would they show up? Would they ruin this too? I shouldn't have cared, but part of me some foolish soft part. Still wondered if they would come. And they did. Late, of course. Looking rumpled and out of place, Mr. Harris's face was set in a grim line. Miss S. Harris's eyes were red-rimmed behind designer sunglasses. Lucas wore a hoodie pulled low over his head, sulking like a teenager instead of a grown man. They clustered near the bar while I stood alone at the railing, watching the last light of day dance across the water. I didn't approach them, and they didn't approach me. For once, I let the distance remain. The boat glided silently across the lake, the water like glass, the air cool and sharp. Couples laughed softly. Families snapped photos. A little girl squealed as a fish leapt from the water nearby. I leaned against the rail and let the wind tug at my hair, my heart bruised but somehow lighter than it had ever been. Later, as the catamaran returned to shore, Mrs. Harris drifted over to me, her mouth tight. "This is childish, Samantha," she said, low and furious. "Punishing your family like this." I turned to her, steady, calm, the way you are when you've already buried the hope that someone will ever truly see you. "I'm not punishing anyone," I said. "I just stopped punishing myself to make you comfortable." Her nostrils flared. "Your father has a bad back, you know. Sleeping in that awful motel." "You had options," I said, voice quiet. "You just didn't want to take responsibility for them." She stared at me like I was speaking another language. Maybe I was. I had always been fluent in their language, sacrifice, silence, second place. But tonight, I spoke my own. Without waiting for a response, I turned and walked away. The next few days unfolded in a strange, beautiful rhythm. The family hiking trip? I went alone and watched the sunrise from a rocky ledge. The cooking class? I laughed with strangers over handmade pasta, my cheeks flushed with wine and joy. The historical walking tour? I wandered cobblestone streets without once glancing over my shoulder to see if someone was trailing behind, whining about the heat or their sore feet. Each time I returned to the suite, it felt a little more like home, not because it was luxurious, but because it was mine. A space where I didn't have to make myself small. I saw them now and then, of course. At the hotel cafe, their clothes rumpled and spirits battered. In the lobby, Lucas loudly arguing with the concierge about their broken air conditioner at the motel. They never spoke to me again after that confrontation on the boat. Not once. And that, more than anything, told me I'd made the right choice. I wasn't the villain in this story. I was just the one who finally stopped playing a rigged game. And somehow, impossibly, beautifully, I didn't feel guilty. Not even a little. It was the last night of the trip when the inevitable knock came at my door. I was curled up on the oversized couch, a novel open in my lap and a half-finished glass of wine at my side, when I heard it. 3 short knocks. Hesitant. Almost apologetic. I didn't move at first. Just stared at the door, my heart oddly calm. Eventually I rose, setting my glass down with a soft clink. When I opened the door, Mr. Harris stood there alone. No Mrs. Harris. No Lucas. Just him, shoulders stiff in a wrinkled polo shirt, a look on his face that I recognized from years of negotiations over curfews and report cards, controlled, calculated, half-hearted remorse. "May I come in?" he asked, voice low. I stepped aside without a word. He didn't sit. Instead, he paced toward the massive window, looking out at the glittering lake beyond. "I wanted to talk to you," he said finally, still facing the glass. "Alone." I said nothing, waiting. "You've made your point," he continued, loud and clear. Still, I stayed silent. Let him circle around it, like a dog looking for a way under the fence. "We're not perfect," he said, finally turning to face me. "Maybe we leaned on you more than was fair." leaning. What a nice word for 26 years of being invisible unless they needed something. But this stunt, he said, voice sharpening, this was cruel. I tilted my head, studying him like he was an exhibit behind glass. Cruel, I repeated softly. You want to talk about cruelty? He stiffened. I wanted this trip to be about family, I said. I booked the rooms, paid for the activities, spent months planning every detail. And before we even checked in, you made it clear I didn't matter. That's not true, he said too quickly. Isn't it? I asked. I wasn't even worth a bed. He opened his mouth to protest, then closed it again, jaw working furiously. I crossed my arms over my chest, the soft cotton of my sweater grounding me. You chose Lucas again, I said. You always do. And when I finally said no, you called me cruel. He finally dropped his gaze. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. The way regret sat heavy on his shoulders. The way he looked smaller somehow, shrunken inside himself. Almost. But then I remembered every birthday party that ended in tears because Lucas wasn't feeling well and needed all the attention. Every school award ceremony I attended alone because there was an emergency meeting at work. Every time I bent myself backwards trying to earn a fraction of what Lucas got for free. Mr. Harris shifted awkwardly. Your mother? He began. She cried herself to sleep. I didn't react. I wouldn't let him weaponize her tears against me again. And Lucas. He hesitated. He's not doing well. He's upset. I laughed quietly, a dry sound. Lucas is upset because the world isn't bending to him for once. He'll survive. You used to be the good one, Mr. Harris said, almost sadly. I still am, I said. Just not for you anymore. He walked over to the small dining table where my room service tray still sat, the remains of grilled salmon and lemon risotto. You've changed, he said finally. I grew up, I said, and left us behind? No, I said. You stayed behind. The room filled with a heavy, aching silence, the kind made of years and years of missed chances. Mr. Harris scrubbed a hand over his face, suddenly looking older than I'd ever seen him. We're flying back tomorrow, he said, reaching for the door handle. Will you come with us? I have my own ride arranged, I said simply. He hesitated again, as if searching for the right words. Finally, he settled on, For what it's worth, Samantha, the first proud of you. And then he was gone, the door clicking shut behind him. I stood there for a long time after he left, staring at the closed door, proud of me. It should have meant something. It didn't. Not anymore. Because it wasn't pride that I had been chasing all these years. It was love, respect, the kind you didn't have to bleed yourself dry to earn. And now, finally, I didn't need their scraps. I had built something better inside myself. The next morning was clear and cool, the sky a brilliant sweep of blue over the lake. I took my time packing, folding each piece of clothing carefully, lovingly, like I was packing away an old life. Downstairs, I checked out without a glance toward the lobby where I knew they'd be waiting. Jacob smiled as he handed me my receipt. Hope you enjoyed your stay, he said warmly. I smiled back. I really did. The shuttle to the airport was waiting outside. I slid into the back seat, settling into the worn leather, and pulled out my phone. No new texts. No guilt-laden voicemails. Just blessed, golden silence. I glanced out the window as we pulled away from the resort. For a brief second, I caught a glimpse of them. Mr. Harris, Miss S. Harris, Lucas, clustered together, arguing, glancing anxiously at their phones. I leaned back against the seat, the weight lifting off my chest, molecule by molecule. I had survived worse than their disappointment, I had survived being invisible. Now, I was something else entirely, visible, whole, free. And that, I thought, was a kind of wealth none of them could ever take from me again. Coming back home felt different this time, not like returning to a cage, not like shrinking back into a shape they had carved out for me. This time, it felt like stepping into a future that finally belonged to me. The city lights blinked outside my apartment window, sprawling like a galaxy across the hills. I set my suitcase down and just stood there for a moment, breathing it in, the smell of rain on the pavement, the distant sound of traffic, the hum of life continuing, uncaring and beautiful. No missed calls, no guilt-drenched voicemails, no lectures masked as concern, just silence. And for once, it didn't feel lonely. It felt clean. It felt earned. The first few days passed in a haze of small, deliberate choices. I rearranged my apartment, shifting furniture that had been waiting for someone else's comfort. The guest room, always on standby for Lucas's impromptu visits, was cleared out. The twin bed and spare dresser were donated to a local shelter. In their place, I set up a home office with a bright blue rug, a bookshelf overflowing with novels, and a desk by the window where the morning light pooled like honey. It wasn't just a room. It was a declaration no more saving spaces for people who never saved space for me. I started saying yes to things I used to push aside. Dinner invitations from friends I hadn't seen in months. A yoga class at the community centre. A pottery workshop where I ruined 3 vases and laughed until my sides hurt. And when my boss offered me a promotion, a real one with better pay and more responsibility, I didn't hesitate. For years I had said no to things like this, worried about being available for family emergencies that always seemed to orbit around Lucas. Now, there were no such obligations, only possibilities. About 2 weeks after returning home, an envelope arrived in my mailbox. Plain, unassuming. My heart stumbled a little when I saw the handwriting, Miss S. Harris's, looping cursive. Inside was a cheque, made out to me for the full amount I had spent on the family trip. Tucked into the folds of the letter was a short note, reimbursement for our share. Thank you for showing us a mirror. No apology, no declaration of love or understanding, just acknowledgement, cold, precise, almost surgical. I sat with it for a long time, turning the cheque over and over in my fingers. It wasn't what I wanted. It wasn't healing. It wasn't closure. But it was something, a small, strange signal that they had, finally, maybe, seen me. Not as the fixer, not as the spare, just me. I drafted a text and deleted it 3 times before finally settling on something simple. Got your letter. Would you like to meet for coffee next weekend? I sent it and set my phone down without expectation. Minutes passed. Then an hour. When the response finally came, it was cautious but clear. Yes, your father and I would like that. No mention of Lucas. No demands. Just yes. The following Saturday, I sat at a little cafe near the park, nursing a latte, watching the rain streak down the window. I wasn't sure what I expected. Maybe another performance, maybe more excuses. But when Mr. and Miss S. Harris walked in, they looked different, not broken, not apologetic. Exactly. Just a little smaller, a little quieter. They approached my table hesitantly, like tourists unsure they were in the right place. Hi, Samantha, Miss S. Harris said, voice soft. Hi, I said, offering a small smile. They sat down, fumbling with their jackets, their coffee orders, their words. For a few minutes we talked about safe things, the weather, my job, their dog. Surface-level chatter, harmless and thin. And yet, underneath it, something tentative pulsed, not quite forgiveness, but maybe recognition, an acceptance that the ground between us had shifted, maybe permanently. They didn't mention Lucas. And I didn't ask. There was nothing left to say there. Some things don't get fixed. They just stop bleeding. Later, as I walked home, the rain misting lightly over the streets, I realized something important. This wasn't a new chapter of the same old story. It wasn't the beginning of a reunion tour. It was just me, choosing to walk forward without dragging their weight behind me. Whatever happened with them, whether we rebuilt something or let it crumble, didn't define me anymore. I was free to build something better, something mine. That night, I stood by my window, sipping tea, watching the city breathe below me. I wasn't sure what the future looked like. Maybe it would be messy. Maybe it would be lonely sometimes, but it would be mine. And for the first time in my life, that was enough. Story 2. I was barely 2 steps into my parents' living room when I knew something was wrong. My sister, Rachel, 31, was perched on the armrest, smirking. My dad, Gordon, 58, lounged across the couch, swirling a glass of wine, looking far too pleased with himself. My mum, Eleanor, 56, offered me a brittle smile from the armchair. My brother, Noah, 28, was by the window, pretending to scroll his phone. I stood there, still holding the stupid gift basket I brought, coat half on. "What's going on?" I asked, my voice sharper than intended. Rachel swung her legs casually. Family meeting. No one had told me what it was about, just a vague text in the family group chat. Be here at 6. Important. Dad cleared his throat with theatrical pomp. We had a vote. My stomach dropped. A vote? He set his wine down, clasped his hands. About the reunion. About the Italy trip next month. I blinked. Okay? Rachel didn't wait for the build-up. You're not coming. Silence. I swear I could hear the radiator buzzing. I laughed once, sharp. You're joking. Nope, Rachel said, practically glowing. We just think it's for the best. For group harmony. I felt the air shift, thick with awkwardness. Group harmony. Right. Mum nodded weakly. Last year there was tension. You remember the incident with the waiter? The one where they overcharged us $80 in service fees and I was the only one who noticed, I said flatly. That's not the point, Rachel chimed in, voice syrupy sweet. You've been so uptight lately. Budgets, rules, boundaries. It's not the vibe. I took a slow breath. Let me get this straight. You're cutting me out of the reunion, the trip I planned, the flights I booked, the villa I reserved, the one I paid for? You offered, Dad said with a shrug. I didn't offer to be excluded, I shot back. Rachel crossed her legs like some smug judge. You've changed, Chris. You're not as easygoing as you used to be, because I started saying no, because I stopped letting them treat me like an endless ATM. Mom piped up, we just want this year to be peaceful. I stared at them. These people, my family, who I had bent over backward to help. 2 weeks ago they had begged me to float the $7,000 villa deposit because Dad's bonus hadn't come in yet. They sent me emojis afterward, little thank yous that now felt like spit in my face. I pulled out my phone, thumbs moving calmly. Dad's phone buzzed on the coffee table. He frowned, picked it up. What's this? He muttered. That, I said, sliding my keys into my pocket, is me locking the travel card, the one I used to book your flights, hotels, and that overpriced villa in Tuscany. You can't do that, Rachel hissed, shooting to her feet. I can. And I did. Noah finally looked up from his phone, eyes wide. Dude, the trip's in 3 weeks. Manifest it, I said coolly. You believe in manifesting, right? Mom stood, face strained. You're acting like a child. No, Mom, I said evenly. I've just stopped acting like a doormat. Dad stood too, furious. You're being spiteful. No, I corrected, heading for the door. I'm being done. And with that, I left them, jaws slack, wine glasses trembling, Tuscany dream disintegrating before their eyes. That night, I barely slept. I kept thinking about the look on their faces when I walked out, the shock, the panic, the realization that the vacation they thought they could kick me out of wasn't happening without me. Around midnight, my phone buzzed. A text from Rachel. No words, just 3 laughing emojis. I stared at the screen for a while, feeling something crack deep inside me. Not sadness, not regret. Something colder, like a final thread snapping. Then, around 2 a.m., a message from Mum. Don't let this ruin everything. We still love you. You're just making things difficult. I set my phone face down. Difficult. That's what I was now. Not the one who spent hours planning a reunion across an ocean. Not the one who floated thousands of dollars because it's just a timing issue. No, I was the problem. But it wasn't until the next morning that the real knife came. My cousin, Lily, called out of the blue. We hadn't talked much lately. Mostly because Rachel always made her feel unwelcome at family stuff. Hey, she said. Are you okay? I blinked. I mean, not really, but how do you know about it? There was a pause. Then she sighed. They posted about it. What do you mean, posted? On Instagram. My stomach turned. What did they say? They're spinning it. Saying you had a meltdown and cancelled your own trip because you were jealous. I was silent. They posted a boomerang. Wine glasses clinking. Captioned it. When the toxic one finally removes himself. Reunion ready, #good vibes only. I could barely breathe for a second. They're really leaning into it, Lily added quietly. Like, publicly. Like they're proud of it. Something inside me flipped cold. Sharp. Done. You should also know, Lily said hesitantly. Rachel's been talking about you for a while. Saying you're broke. Saying you begged to be included. I stood up so fast the couch nearly tipped. She told people what? She's been spreading stuff for months, making it seem like you're unstable. Like you're some burden we're all carrying. I didn't even finish the call. I just hung up. The rage was white hot and pure. Not only had they voted me out, lied about it, mocked me online, they'd been running a smear campaign for months. I opened my email, hands shaking, pulled up the flight confirmations. I checked the reservation details. And there it was, the final nail. Rachel had upgraded herself to business class, using the shared travel card. My card, the transaction date, 2 days before they kicked me out. I called the airline immediately. Hi, I said, voice steady somehow. I'd like to cancel 4 tickets under the last name Carter. All of them? The agent asked. Yes. Especially the one ending in seat 2A. There was a pause. Click-clack of a keyboard. Done, she said. I thanked her and hung up, feeling lighter than I had in weeks. Later that night, I showed up at my parents' house again. No text. No warning. I just walked in like they always expected me to. Mom opened the door, looking startled. Oh, it's you. Don't sound so excited, I said coolly, stepping past her. In the living room, Dad was reading the paper like he lived in a Norman Rockwell painting. Rachel was hunched over her laptop, no doubt researching a plan B. You'll need a new credit card, I said, voice flat. Rachel looked up, confused. What are you talking about? I smiled, all teeth. The flights? Cancelled. The villa? Rebooked by another guest. Tuscany. Off. You wouldn't, she hissed. I did. You're sabotaging the whole trip. I laughed, a cold, bitter sound. No, You sabotaged it when you thought you could use me, cut me out, and still enjoy the perks. Dad finally lowered his newspaper, glaring at me. You're being rash. I turned to him slowly. No, I'm being fair. You made your choice when you held that little vote. This is just me respecting it. Rachel slammed her laptop shut, standing up. You're so bitter. Funny, I said, pulling a folded paper from my jacket, because this says otherwise. I tossed it onto the coffee table. Rachel snatched it up, her face drained of colour. What is this? Bank statement. 90 days. Every unauthorised charge you made with the travel card. Luxury handbags. Spa weekends. A non-refundable deposit for a yacht charter in Italy. You stole from me, Rachel, I said calmly. You committed fraud. Mum's voice was shrill. Let's all just calm down. I looked her dead in the eye. Where was that energy when you all voted me out of the trip I paid for? Rachel lunged toward me, eyes wild. You're ruining everything. No, I said, stepping back. I'm setting things straight. Dad stood up too, looming. You're not part of this family anymore if you keep this up. I smiled. Sharp. Unforgiving. Finally, I said, turning toward the door. Something we actually agree on. As I left, I could hear them shouting behind me, accusing, blaming, panicking. But I didn't flinch. I didn't owe them another second of my peace. The next morning, it was weirdly quiet. No rage texts, no guilt trips, no come back and talk this out, just silence. I made myself coffee, sat by the window, and watched the sunrise without a single knot in my stomach. It felt strange. Good, but strange. I knew it wouldn't last. Sure enough, around lunchtime, a letter showed up at my door. An actual letter, not a text, not a voicemail. A formal notice from a law office downtown. I sat down at the kitchen table, the paper shaking just slightly in my hands. It was real. My parents and Rachel had lawyered up. They were threatening to sue me for financial disruption and emotional damages caused by me cancelling the trip. I had to laugh. Not because it was funny, because it was so pathetic. These people, my blood, had drained me dry for years, treated me like a credit card with a pulse, and now they were trying to come after me because I finally said no. I didn't respond. I didn't even call them. I made a better plan. The next Saturday, I showed up at the family dinner they always had once a month. I walked in like nothing had changed. The room went dead quiet. Dad was there. Mum too. Rachel, her boyfriend. Even Noah, looking uncomfortable as hell. Perfect. I set my tablet down on the coffee table and plugged it into the big TV. What's this? Rachel sneered. Just something to clear the air, I said, my voice light. Since you want to drag me into court, we should all be looking at the same evidence. I hit play. Slide 1. A screenshot of Rachel upgrading her flight to business class. On my card. Slide 2. A hotel receipt, $1,200, signed in Rachel's name. Again, billed to me. Slide 3. Video footage from a security camera, time-stamped, showing Rachel and her boyfriend checking into a luxury hotel. Silence. The kind of silence that weighs 100 pounds. Mum looked like she wanted to melt into the carpet. Dad sat frozen. Noah just stared at his hands. Rachel jumped up. This is fake, I shrugged. Funny how it matches your bank transactions. Down to the penny. You promised to help us, she shouted. I stood there calm as a stone. I did help for years, and you turned around and called me toxic. You lied to everyone. You spent my money like it was yours. Dad finally exploded. You're tearing this family apart. No, I said softly. You did that when you chose convenience over respect. I pulled out one final envelope. It was a letter from my bank. An official fraud investigation had been opened. Against Rachel, all charges documented. IP addresses logged. Surveillance footage submitted. Rachel went white as a sheet. You wouldn't dare, she hissed. I already did, I said, and guess what? It's out of my hands now. She lunged like she wanted to hit me, but Noah stepped between us. For the first time in my life, my brother stood on my side. I'm done too, Noah said quietly, voice shaking. I let it go too long, watching you steal, lie, gaslight him. I'm not part of this anymore either. Rachel screamed something, I honestly don't remember what, and stormed out, slamming the door so hard a picture fell off the wall. I turned to Mum and Dad, who just sat there like broken statues. You chose her. You backed her lies. You sold your son for a free vacation. Dad opened his mouth, then closed it again. No argument left. No more votes to rig. I picked up my tablet, tucked it under my arm, and said the last words I'd ever say to them. I'm not your wallet. I'm not your scapegoat. And I'm done letting you pretend I ever was. And I left. The days after the fallout came fast. By Monday, extended family had caught wind of what happened. Turns out Rachel's toxic brother story didn't hold up once people saw the actual evidence. Cousins, aunts, even family friends started messaging me, saying they were sorry, saying they believed me, saying they always wondered why I seemed so isolated at family events. Lily sent me a text. You blew it wide open. I am proud of you, I cried. I'm not even embarrassed to admit it. Not out of sadness. Out of relief. For the first time, I wasn't alone. The legal stuff, the lawyer threats, they went quiet once the fraud investigation moved forward. Funny how fast people stop talking when they're the ones under the microscope. Rachel ended up losing her job when word got out. Apparently, her employer didn't appreciate having an employee being investigated for financial misconduct. Mum tried to call me once. A long, rambling voicemail about how we're still family, and it didn't have to be this way. I didn't call back. Dad didn't call at all. Figures. The new beginning a month later, I moved to a new apartment. A bigger place, brighter windows. No shared accounts, no backup plans for people who never had my back. I even booked a trip. Not to Tuscany. To Iceland. Just me, the open sky, and miles of quiet. My trip. My terms. One morning, standing on a cliff overlooking the ocean, my phone buzzed. A last message from Rachel. Hope you're happy. I stared at it for a while, then deleted it without responding, because I was happy, not because I won, but because I finally stopped playing their game. Final thought, family isn't about blood. It's about respect. It's about people who show up for you when it's hard, not just when it's convenient. I learned that the brutal way, but I also learned something better. You're allowed to leave. You're allowed to stop bleeding for people who never bothered to bring a bandage. You're allowed to choose yourself. And me? I chose peace. And I'm never going back. Story 3. When people say Thanksgiving is about family, I guess they mean the kind that stabs you in the back while smiling over pumpkin pie. This year was supposed to be different. I told myself that while shelling out nearly $1,100 for catering, chair rentals, and enough wine to drown a small village. Different. As if buying the whole damn meal would magically buy me a real seat at the table. Spoiler, it didn't. We had just finished eating. I was clearing plates because apparently I'm also the unpaid help when my mum, Diane, slid a silver-wrapped box onto the table with a too-sweet smile. For you, Chase, she said, like she was handing me a winning lottery ticket. You didn't have to get me anything, I said, trying not to sound bitter. Oh, but I did, she insisted, her voice syrupy enough to rot teeth. My younger brother, Mason, was smirking so hard I wanted to slap it off his face. Dad just sipped his Merlot, staring into the middle distance like a hostage. I should have trusted my gut, should have walked away right then. Instead, I peeled the ribbon off and opened the box. Inside was a binder. Not a gift, not a heartfelt letter, a goddamn binder. On the glossy cover, in aggressive bold font, "If you want to join us for Thanksgiving again, updated guidelines for Chase." At first, I thought it was a joke. It wasn't. "This is?" I asked, voice tight. "Constructive feedback," Mum said brightly, as if she'd just unveiled a homemade pie. Something we all agreed would be helpful. Helpful like a slap in the face. Mason leaned back in his chair, lacing his hands behind his head. "It's just to make things smoother next year, bro. You know, less you." I flipped open the binder, my stomach twisted harder with every section. Conversation rules, no talking about work, no correcting anyone even if they're dead wrong. No jokes about the food. Apparently, saying the turkey was drier than the Sahara was disrespectful. Contribution, expectations. If you choose to pay for dinner, do it quietly. No complaining about costs. No holier-than-thou attitude. No showing up tired or stressed. Behavioural standards, no sarcasm. No passive-aggressive remarks about money. And absolutely no store-bought desserts unless you want to be that guy again. I closed the binder slowly. "This is insane," I said, barely keeping my voice steady. "It's to help you fit in better," Mum said sweetly, as if she hadn't just wrapped a personalised slap to the face. "But I paid for everything," I said, stunned. "And you made sure we all knew," she snapped, quicker than a whip. I blinked, because I had to, because no one else had offered, because I didn't want her crying in the kitchen again, saying she couldn't afford it this year. Mason shrugged. "See? This attitude right here. This is what we're talking about." I laughed then, a sharp, humourless sound that filled the room. "You gift-wrapped a list of everything you hate about me and called it a gift." Dad finally spoke, still not meeting my eyes. "If you can't handle a little feedback, maybe it's better if you don't come next year." There it was, not a binder full of rules, not a conversation. An eviction notice, dressed up in family dinners, and passive, aggressive smiles. I set the binder down carefully, feeling like my hands weren't attached to my body anymore. Looking around the table, these people I had bent over backward for, I saw exactly how much they valued me. I stood up. My chair scraped loudly against the floor. "I'm gonna go," I said. Mum frowned, reaching out half-heartedly. "Chase, don't be dramatic." "I'm not," I said, my voice shockingly calm. "I'm just following the guidelines." I grabbed my coat, feeling the weight of the envelope tucked inside my pocket, the one I had brought just in case. A contingency plan for tonight. Before I walked out, I slid it under the tablecloth by Mum's chair. It looked ordinary, just a manila envelope with a crisp white sticker on the front. Property owner, Chase Reynolds. They hadn't opened it yet. They would. And when they did, not even a 1,000-page binder could save them. 2 months passed after that Thanksgiving. 2 months of radio silence. No group texts. No guilt trips. No invites to awkward family brunches where I paid the tab and left with a headache. It was almost peaceful. Then came Mum's birthday. I wasn't planning to show up. Honestly, I thought they'd finally gotten what they wanted. A drama-free holiday without their difficult son ruining the mood. But then Mason texted me. "Hey, you coming?" Mum made lasagna. No apology, no acknowledgement of the binder, just an invite like nothing had ever happened. I don't know what made me go. Maybe I wanted to see their faces, maybe I just wanted closure. Either way, I walked into that house like it was a crime scene. Same scented candles, same cheesy Hallmark quotes framed on the wall, same forced smiles. "Chase!" Mum called from the kitchen, her voice too high, too cheerful. "Come in. We're just about to eat." Dad gave me a stiff nod. Mason grinned like we were still 12 and he'd just dared me to eat a worm. I sat at the table. The lasagna smelled good. I didn't touch it. Dad poured me a glass of wine without asking. I left it untouched too. They tried small talk. Work, sports, TV shows I didn't watch anymore. I nodded and gave one-word answers. It was almost funny how hard they were trying. Finally, Mum set down her fork and cleared her throat. "So, Chase," she said, glancing at Mason, then Dad. "We were hoping we could talk about the house situation." There it was. I leaned back. "What about it?" Mum smiled like a hostage blinking in Morse code. "You sent us some paperwork." "We didn't really understand it," she said lightly. "Something about foreclosure. I'm sure it was a mistake." I pulled a second envelope out of my jacket pocket and dropped it on the table with a soft thud. Dad flinched. "That," I said, "is the final notice." Mason grabbed the envelope and ripped it open like a kid at Christmas. His face paled as he read. "This says you own the house," he snapped. "I do," I said simply. "You can't just," Mason started, but I cut him off. "You signed the transfer paperwork 3 years ago, when the roof caved in and Mom couldn't refinance. Remember, you all begged me to help. You needed a cosigner. I became the owner. You never bothered to read the documents." Dad's hands were trembling now. "You tricked us," I laughed, low and humorless. "No, I saved you. For 3 years. Paid your property taxes, covered missed mortgage payments, paid off the liens you didn't even know existed, quietly, without ever throwing it in your face." Mum's lip quivered, "but with family." "Exactly," I said, feeling something inside me harden. "And you gave me a binder full of rules instead of a thank you." The room went dead silent. Mason shoved back from the table, furious. "You're seriously evicting your own parents?" "I'm giving you a choice," I said calmly. "Pay the $42,000 you owe me or move out." Dad stood up, fists clenched. "You ungrateful little—" "No," I cut in, standing too. "I'm just done being the family ATM, done being the emotional punching bag, done pretending you loved me unconditionally when the only thing you loved was what I could give you." Mum's voice cracked. "You're destroying this family," I shrugged. "Maybe. Or maybe you did that when you decided I wasn't worth kindness, unless I was useful." Mason pointed a finger at me, shaking. "You think you've won? You think this makes you better?" I looked him straight in the eye. "I don't think I'm better," I said. "I just think I'm finally free. I left the lasagna untouched. I left the wine untouched. I left them untouched." When I closed the front door behind me, I didn't look back. The next morning, my phone lit up like a Christmas tree. Mum called. Dad called. Mason called 6 times. Even my aunt, who hadn't spoken to me in 4 years, left a voicemail. I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I poured myself a cup of coffee, sat on my balcony, and watched the sun come up over a city that suddenly felt a lot bigger and a lot lighter than it had the night before. By noon, they started texting. "Mum, we can work this out, Chase. Please call me. We're family." "Dad, stop being stubborn. You're embarrassing yourself." "Mason, hope you're happy. You ruined everything." I stared at the messages, felt the old reflex to apologize bubbling up, and then let it die. I didn't ruin anything. They did. I just stopped pretending otherwise. 2 days later, a knock came at my door. A man in a wrinkled suit stood there, clutching a briefcase like it was a lifeline. "Chase Reynolds?" he asked. "Yeah. I'm Mark Dawson, representing Diane and Robert Reynolds. They're willing to discuss an arrangement." I almost laughed in his face. "They want the foreclosure reversed?" I guessed. Mark cleared his throat. "Ideally, yes. They believe the transfer was predatory," I smiled. "Cold, tired. They begged me to take ownership. I have texts, emails, voicemails. Hell, I even have the original paperwork with 'Thank you, Chase' scribbled across the bottom." Mark shifted uncomfortably. "Still, they're hoping for a private settlement." I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "Tell them," I said, "they can either pay the full amount they owe or vacate the property." End of story. Mark opened his mouth, probably to argue, but I closed the door before he could get a word out. No yelling, no drama, just peace. It was so easy once I stopped needing their approval. The fallout came faster than I expected. Mason posted a raging Facebook status 2 days later. "Some people care more about money than blood. Hope your granite countertops keep you warm at night, bro." It got 4 likes, 2 from burner accounts he probably made himself. Mum sent a long email about how much I was hurting the family and how no one is perfect, but it read like a PR release after a scandal, more about saving face than saving the relationship. Dad didn't bother with words. He sent a single text, "Ungrateful." No surprise there. The real surprise came a week later when I got a phone call from an unfamiliar number. I almost didn't pick up, but something in me said to. It was Kelly, Mason's wife. "Chase," she said, voice low. I wanted you to know. I'm leaving Mason." I sat up straighter. "What?" "I can't do it anymore," she said, like she was finally exhaling after holding her breath for years. The lying, the entitlement, the way he talks about you even now, like you're just disposable. I stayed silent, giving her space. "I just wanted you to know," she said again. "You weren't crazy. You weren't wrong." I swallowed hard. "Thanks, Kelly." She hung up before I could say anything else. A month later, the house officially changed hands. The bank processed the foreclosure. My parents had to move out. I didn't go to see it. Didn't watch them pack up their lives into cardboard boxes. I didn't need to. My lawyer sent me the final confirmation. Property vacant, clear, ready for sale. When I got the email, I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel guilt. I just felt still. A week after they moved out, I got something unexpected. A letter. No return address. Inside was a single photo. A snapshot from 20 years ago. Thanksgiving when I was maybe 10. I'm sitting at the table, wearing a paper crown someone made me out of construction paper, smiling so hard it almost hurts to look at. Everyone else in the photo is blurred, turned away, mid-conversation. On the back of the photo, scrawled in shaky handwriting, "You were never invisible. You were just surrounded by people who forgot how to see you." No signature. But I recognized the writing. Grandma June. I sat there holding the picture in my hands, and for the first time in years, I let myself cry, not for them, for me. For the boy who thought he had to earn love by paying bills, fixing problems, being useful. For the man who finally learned that real love doesn't come with a binder full of rules. This past Thanksgiving, the first made dinner alone. Real plates, real silverware, no fake smiles, no lists of expectations. I even made pie from scratch, burned it a little, laughed at myself, ate it anyway. No one texted, no one called, and for once, I didn't need them to. The silence wasn't lonely. It was earned.